I think for me, the priority is actually the same priority that we had before going into lockdown, and that is discipleship, loving God, loving others as Jesus loved us, and going and making disciples. That's what we're called to. I feel that that's got to be our focus, and whilst the context for that may have shifted, the culture around us and the opportunities are different maybe, still I think the mission is the mission, and for us it's asking the hard questions of that. Are we doing it? Are we actually doing it? Are we seeing, are we raising disciples? We're making disciples. If not, why not? And I think that needs to be a key priority for us moving forward. We need to identify the obstacles that stop us from doing that, and challenge them and try to overcome them. For me, exile was a good concept for me to reflect on lockdown, and found that very helpful. And I'm reminded in Jeremiah 29 verses 4-7 of what the Lord said to the exiles who had lost everything seemingly, and He said, just carry on as you were before. Get married, flourish, have children, and work hard, and increase, don't decrease. And I think that was a really helpful word that has really helped me to see the fact that that whilst things around us are changing, God hasn't changed. The mission is still the same. He's able to do whatever He wants to do, and we need to trust and follow Him in that. And so as part of that, the exiles had opportunities, I feel, as we've had opportunities, and I think they can be summed up as refraining from things. So we've had to refrain from doing things, and that's created space to rethink and to refine maybe old ways of worshipping. I've had to hang my harp on the tree. I've not played the guitar for a while in church, and so looking at different ways of how we gather and worship together has been really important, and then also refocusing on what's important. And for me, that has been relationships within the church, relationships with my own family, relationships in the neighbourhood. We've made some great friends through the lockdown period, and I really want to focus on those moving forward, as they really are gifts. And then the last thing is just simply to reimagine, to restore, to reinvent with the resources that we have. We can think about what we've lost, and it may well be that we'll have people that won't return to church, and that might be difficult initially, but I really feel that the Lord's been saying, now is the time just not to think about that. Look at what you do have, and bring that to me, and see what I can do with it.
Well, we're very much looking forward to meeting again as a fellowship, getting back in the building, though we have really enjoyed the Zoom services as well. I think the dynamics of the fellowship will have changed quite a bit during the last year, so that will be quite interesting to negotiate. In terms of the work we do in the community, again, lots of changes. Street pastors haven't operated here for a year, and also night shelter hasn't been needed this year, and hopefully won't ever be needed again. And those things took up quite a bit of my time and commitment. So it will be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing, and very much open to see what God is going to do in the future and is doing now that we will need to get involved in. Unfortunately, I have got no clear picture about what that is at the moment, and we'll just keep an open heart and see what happens.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, the pandemic has not been an easy time for anybody, but it has created opportunities for the church, and ourselves at Bethlehem have been one of those churches who have been able to make use of the internet and of social media platforms to get the message of Jesus out into the community, even when the church building has been shut. But the online church is most certainly not the perfect church. Here in an area with poor internet connection and with a percentage of people who are computer illiterate, the online church is certainly not the perfect church in those circumstances. And we mustn't forget that Jesus set the example for us as he walked this earth. He was very much about the focus on interacting with people and personal relationships. And We mustn't ever forget that when we're thinking about what the future holds for the Church of Jesus Christ after the pandemic. And there's one other question that is going around my mind, which I just think I've got time to share. And that is, I am keenly aware, I read something on an Evangelical Alliance article, and that's been reinforced in some of my conversations with other ministers. And I'm keenly aware that there are a lot of ministers who are very, very tired. And so as the churches come back together and they start to resume activities, and maybe some people are raring to get back to anything and everything, how is that going to be managed with a group of ministers who may be worn out and exhausted, and certainly not unaffected through this pandemic personally? And I think that's one of the questions that the church generally is going to have to address. How do we support our ministers so that they have time to recover themselves at the same time as helping everybody else to recover?
At Griffithstown, we're not meeting at the moment. We're still doing everything online. And there are plenty of questions that we consider each month when we meet to review whether we're going to be opening or not. We have to ask simply whether it's safe for us to return to worshipping in person. We need to consider when the community would find it appropriate for us to meet in person, given that businesses and community groups are still facing so many restrictions. And we also have to ask the question, how do we meet when we can only fit maybe a third of the number we would normally get in the church building with distancing rules? I think those are the questions probably that most churches are asking. But I guess the biggest question, or the biggest challenge that we face is a practical one. And that is simply, how do we do church in a post-COVID Griffithstown? And I mean that is as in Sunday worship, small groups, mission, children's work, everything that makes us church. We can do those things in person, we can do those things online. In person is easier in so many ways. But after a year actually of having a completely online presence, I think we've realised that there are some people who can only do one or the other, certainly not both. I mean, over lockdown, our small groups have grown. We've gained a number of online worshippers through our YouTube channel and our daily Facebook midday moment thought for the day. And some of those engaging online may not be comfortable joining us in person. Actually, simply may not be able to due to geographic restrictions. I doubt that our listener who joins us from New Zealand would be joining us for in-person Bible study. So the question is, with limited time and technology and what is an older congregation, how do we continue to reach out with the gospel when we return probably primarily to in-person worship? Because when the reach of the gospel increases, we have to adapt to that.